Hi. Welcome to English Fundamentals YouTube channel. In this video, we'll show you over 50 English contractions that every English learner must know. So if you're ready, let's begin. First of all, let's define what a contraction is. A contraction is the process of putting words, usually two words, together to create a shorter version. In most contractions, an apostrophe is used to represent the missing letter or letters. Let's start with the contractions of pronouns and to be verbs. The contracted version of I am is I'm. You are. You're. He or she is. He's or she's. Next, we have we are. We're. They are. They're. The following contractions have two versions. Check them out. The contractions of you are not is you're not or you aren't. He or she is not. The contractions can be he or she isn't, and he's not or she's not. Next, we are not. We're not or we aren't. They are not. They're not or they aren't. This time, let's have the past form of to be verbs. I was not. I wasn't. You were not. You weren't. He or she was not. He wasn't and she wasn't. We were not. We weren't. They were not. They weren't. Now, the last set using to be verbs. You'll see here that irregardless of whether the verb is present or past tense, they still have the same contraction. What is or what was? What's. Where is or where was? Where's. Who is or who was becomes whose. That is or that was. That's. There is or there was becomes there's. To have verbs. In here, we will show you two different ways to form the contractions of the following words. I have or I have not becomes I've and I haven't. You have or you have not becomes you've and you haven't. He or she has and he or she has not becomes he's or she's. Then he hasn't and she hasn't. We have or we have not becomes we've and we haven't. They have or they have not becomes they've and they haven't. I had or had not becomes I'd and I hadn't. You had or you had not becomes you'd and you hadn't. He or she had and he or she had not will become he'd and she'd. Then he hadn't and she hadn't. We had or we had not becomes we'd and we hadn't. They had or they had not becomes they'd and they hadn't. Now, let's move on to the words contracted with the verb will, together with its past tense form would. I will becomes I'll. You will becomes you'll. He or she will becomes he'll and she'll. We will becomes we'll. They will becomes they'll. Observe how the next set are being contracted. Using the verb will plus the word not, the contracted form is won't. But when using the verb would plus the word not, the contracted form is wouldn't. Let's go to the last two sets using the verb will and its past tense form would. That will becomes that'll. Who will becomes who'll. What will becomes what'll. There will becomes there'll. I would becomes I'd. You would becomes you'd. He or she would becomes he'd and she'd. We would becomes we'd. They would becomes they'd. And now, to complete our 50 plus contractions, Let's have the verbs can and shall, with their past tense forms could and should, being contracted with the word not. When contracting the verb can, with the word not, the contracted form is can. But when contracting the verb could, with the word not, it becomes couldn't. Lastly, the verb shall. When contracting the verb shall, with the word not, the contracted form is shan't. But when contracting the verb should, with the word not, it becomes shouldn't. Okay. That completes our list of 50 plus English contractions. But hey, we still have a bonus for you. Here's a list of some informal English contractions that we usually hear native speakers use. Here they are. The word gonna is the contracted form of the words going and to. Example, I'm gonna answer with them. Next is the word gotta, is the contracted form of the words got and to. Example, I've gotta go. Wanna is the contracted form of the words want and to. Example, I want to go home. The word lemme is the contracted form of let and me. Example, let me do it. Gimme is the contracted form of if and me. Example, give me that ball. The word oughta is the contracted form of out and of. Example, I'm outta here. Kinda is the contracted form of kind and of. Example, she's kinda sick today. The word I'm ma is the contracted form of the words I'm going and to. Example, I'm ma let him win. Dunno is the contracted form of don't or doesn't plus no. Example, you dunno what it feels like. Now, let's check if you can tell us the words being contracted in the following sentences. Example, he's my classmates in 4th grade. The answer is he was. Alright. Are you ready? Let's start. Number 1. They're going to a trip today. What's the words used in the contracted word, there? Answer, they are. Number 2. She isn't trying to impress you. What's the answer? Is not. Number 3. We've been waiting for you. Answer. We had. Number 4. There'll be new guests tonight. What's the answer? There will. Number 5. You shouldn't do that to her. Answer. Should not. Number 6. He can't do it by himself. The answer is cannot. Lastly, number 7. She'd rather go home than join us. What's the answer? She would. Well, let me congratulate you for reaching up to this point. This kind of lesson needs mastery, so don't hesitate to go watch this video again. It's always available for you. If you learned from this lesson, we'll appreciate if you can hit the like button. Also, click the notification bell to catch our latest videos. And if you haven't subscribed, please do so. We'll see you in our next lesson. Thank you for watching.